Okay, tonight is our wrap-up session. So, yeah, I just feel so filled with gratitude with everyone. This just came so amazingly together, and all of us coming together for this, and then it's being orchestrated. The scene is set up, and then the scene is going to be taken away. So, yeah, this is our wrap-up.
Party.
This is our last party for here. Yeah. So, yeah, I just always like to open it up and be here for you with anything that came up or anything that's still coming around in your minds, or things that you'd still like to follow up on, or see if there's anything that's still bouncing around in there.
Can you think of one miracle in your life that just stands out beyond every other miracle?
Well, I think the most impactful thing for me, I had 3 revelatory experiences where the world just disappeared and it was just pure light. So those were the ones that were, they were just unspeakable, but also, coming back, it was a bit bumpy, a bit fearful, coming back to the world. And they were very inspiring for me. You know, it really kind of gave me like piercing the veil experiences. So those are the ones that always stand out.
Was that before you found the Course?
No, that was after the Course. Yeah, they started off as eye-gazing experiences, and then it went into revelatory experiences.
Well, I have something I guess I could bring up in discussion. Recently, one of my friends was telling me about a monk who had kind of gone through this process of trying everything. Because normally, there's a lot of, especially in yogic philosophy, especially even in like a monk or ashram type environment, there's a lot of withdrawal of certain pleasures or certain aspects of life, to withdraw the senses and just let go of more and simplify. But he had told me about, and I don't remember, I don't think he told me the name of the monk or who it was, but he said, no, actually there's like so many different paths to the mountain, and there's this one path of trying everything, doing everything to excess, and it's called like crazy wisdom path. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. What you can speak to about that. It was interesting to me because I hadn't really heard of that path. I know like in my own life I'd gone through a period of, there was times of excess that led me to a dark, deep point of awakening. And so I related to it in that way. But for me, on my path, I don't feel like I need to try more excesses. But I was interested to just hear about that path and what kind of wisdom might arise.
Yeah. Well, I think after the time of Jesus, probably there was a group of people very shortly after the time of Jesus that were so close to him and so close to his message that they actually were part of the teaching that the world's an illusion. They were that close to that teaching, which of course in all the pathways, Maya and illusion is called by different things, but what they did was they believed that because the world is an illusion, you could indulge in all the pleasures of the world to prove that it was an illusion. But in retrospect, that doesn't work. It's actually a delay maneuver. And I would say, there's a whole tradition called crazy wisdom, but for people who really explore things, there are many pathways that lead to God, but some are more direct and more straightforward. And crazy wisdom is the first word. Anything that starts off with crazy should be common sense, like, uh-oh. And a lot of the crazy wisdom teachers, there were teachers who would have the disciples do very, very strange things. And that's why it's called crazy wisdom. But you can never really see a master like Jesus having his apostles do these things. People would recognize him right away, like, this is not direct and authentic. So I don't actually consider crazy wisdom as a pathway to God. I would say it's a defense against authentic awakening, and most people have a pretty good intuition and a BS bullshit detector, and if you went near a crazy wisdom teacher, the BS would light up all over the place, and most people don't stay around very much because they would say, I'm not that gullible. I have a higher intuition than that. So I did find, though, that I did explore a lot of pathways, and I traveled around the world, and I went to ashrams and synagogues, and I was invited to many different places. And occasionally, some of them were a little bit borderline of crazy wisdom, where a guru would invite me, and then the guru would be using his finger to try to move people around, and then after the session, a lot of the devotees would usually come and go, there's some fishy things that are happening in our ashram. Could we talk to you about that? And it was all for discernment and saving time. They were all very, very sincere of not wanting to get caught in long delays, because the ego is quite ingenious. Even for a puff of nothingness, it's quite the trickster, and most people just don't want the tricks. They don't want that at all.
That's what my intuition told me was like, okay, well, I'm past that point of needing anything like that or needing to follow anything like that.
Yeah,
I was just curious about what that even was.
Yeah.
How that works.
I think the characteristic is there's usually a guru and very strange things that the devotees are supposed to do, and then when questioned about it, the one surrounding the guru will just say the quote, he's just playing with you, or she's just playing with you. But true wisdom won't play with you. True wisdom welcomes you to the light. It's not like a detour. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah.
I just want to acknowledge that it's been quite a year, and I know it's been quite a year for everybody. And we're wrapping up this year, and there's been so much change in my life and in our life together.
Yes.
I would like to hear, for those who haven't been to the monastery or to Mexico or Utah, because it was so profound for us. When or how do they do that, and how do they find out more? And maybe you could speak to it, because most people probably haven't been.
Yeah.
I know some have, but most haven't.
Yeah. Well, in the past we've had all kinds of different programs, but we had a mystery school. I think you came and were part of a mystery school, and it's kind of just a safe place where you can start to get into some pretty major questioning and dismantling, kind of at a real deep level. And I think that's you both were there for, was it a couple?
We were just there for 2 weeks.
2 weeks, yeah. Mm-hmm. And then after you left, wow, the rest of the year was kind of like your continuing mystery school.
Yeah.
Dismantling from so many things that people consider just to be the natural order of the way things are. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned even with your daughter now, 23, and she's probably a little curious too of watching you.
We want her to be more
curious.
Wish
she was curious.
Did she come on the movie today?
No.
No, she didn't.
No. But I mean, that's maybe another segue. But we wish that there was a group of younger people that were in their early 20s or that could mentor each other.
Yeah.
I just don't know how she would connect in with that.
Yeah, right now at the monastery there are a group of mostly fairly young, maybe in the range of maybe 26 into the early 30s, of people that are kind of rapidly kind of unwinding. Their life was on a trajectory that was more conventional, and now they've come to be part of collaborative projects, because we use a lot of collaborative projects. So while you're going through the mind training and dismantling, you can do something where your mind can focus on the collaboration. And I think, even if you look back to Jesus and the apostles, that was like a 3-year collaborative adventure with Jesus and these group of men, and then there was the women's corps, and there was Mary Magdalene and everything around him, and there still was, obviously with their travels and talks, there still was organization, where do we stay, there was handling all kind of logistics, and you still have those things that are part of, like the mystery school, we still had all those things. But a number of sessions, and over the years, sometimes I've done like 4 to 6 week retreats that were kind of the precursors of the mystery school, where people would just come from different parts of the world, and then we would have a little mini community in which people would take on various different things and learn to communicate, openly express, like we talked about today. We could see the main character, she was starting to be more direct as the movie went on, and not hide her feelings and not beat around the bush. And that's really the point of developing more open communication, so that you can really get in touch with your feelings fast, and then also not hide them. Because when they're hidden, they're protected, then you're less likely to release them to the light. So there's been a lot of those things. Right now, the monastery has I think there's about 10 people there, and we've just completed a year of what we were calling Go Green, Go Clean. Was more of an getting the monastery updated, but there was a lot of collaborative projects. Some of them required a lot of extra skills, like solar and things like that. And actually, Paulinia just came. You spent a few weeks at the monastery before you came here? How was your experience?
Oh my God, really deep, really deep. I'm still processing like everything. I live there, but yeah, we're like using the projects and the functions there to go deeper in the mind, and it was so beautiful.
Yeah. So at this prayer time, there's different things that are joining. I think you went on some outings.
Yeah.
It was like I saw a lot of photos. You did a little video of like a group outing. Was it the Provo for The Chosen?
Yeah.
When it was at the theater?
We went to see the 2 first episodes for the season 3 together. Yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah. It does help sometimes to come away. I think that's this. You and Gabriel were both at the monastery there for a while, and then this was a trip preceding this retreat. But sometimes when you do step away from the familiar patterns and everything, then just doing that, it starts to open up a space in the mind. Cindy's been part of spiritual communities for years, on and off, back and forth. A lot of times I knew you were in and out and in and out and in and out, and you know, in one sense it helped with the mind training, and in the other sense, I think we were talking just a couple days ago, you were saying how the loosening of the family self-concept, for many people it takes years and years and years, and it's like a gradual loosening. Until recently, you kind of went back and popped through it, where it was so drastically transformed that you were just kind of looking around like, who are these people? You went from it being really familiar to who are them? And I think Dan's probably saying, I would like to zoom closer into that listening, Yeah.
Yeah, it was a huge shift, huge miracle shift. Yeah. It was taking many years, but like you said, just following the breadcrumbs.
Yeah, I think it helps to have some of the metaphysical understandings, but then there is nothing like walking through the loosening from things, because they're so heavily ingrained, so heavily programmed in there that you have to kind of loosen and loosen, and that's pretty much the way that the Holy Spirit works. It has to be a gentle loosening, because it would be too traumatic if it was too big of a shift. People oftentimes, when they do hallucinogenic drugs, have big openings, and then they have a very difficult time integrating after an ayahuasca experience or some major openings. And as I mentioned, Eckhart Tolle, it took him 2 or 3 years to integrate and orient back to living on the planet after that, which just gives you a clue like how reality is so different from what's considered to be reality in this world. There's just a huge gulf between that. And yet, what Jesus says is most are given a slowly evolving curriculum. So the vast majority go through a much more slowly evolving curriculum. And there can be periods of breakthroughs and ecstasy and expansion, and then there can be periods of darkness and doubt. And as you go through it, you start to realize, wow, this is the way it's going to go. There's these kind of swings are very much a part of it. Sometimes, over the years, people have gone to mental institutions, and sometimes people who have had like psychotic breaks and major kind of meltdowns, they actually have a lot of wisdom. Sometimes they become inside the psychiatric ward amazing channels of spirit, but it's not like they've gone in a stabilized way, so that they can continue functioning. That's more of kind of like a race car driver who takes the turns too fast and then just spins out, and then there seems to be almost like a recovery period of trying to integrate after that. So I have found, though, that the purpose, that getting in touch with the underlying purpose, that has been the stabilizing force for me. That when I started to travel, share, face things, work through emotions and everything, even in the early years when I was driving around the United States, I would feel sometimes so destabilized that when I'm driving to my next place, I was starting off by saying to Jesus, I'm in no condition to give a talk. I feel emotionally like the scarecrow with all of my straw missing. And Jesus would just say, well, you've got an 8-hour drive, so just enjoy it. Like, put on some music and meditate. And of course, right now you don't feel like it, but just trust that after 8 or 10 hours, you'll be ready. And then I would be ready. I would feel much different after those 8 or 10 hours. But it was, I enjoyed having those long spaces for praying and meditating, processing, listening to music, and then showing up almost surprised, like, oh, I actually feel good. And then there we go. Then another gathering. Then there was more. But I think, too, it is a journey that takes you more and more inward to praying. I mean, especially with living with other people, even living with other like-minded people, it can get very, very difficult at times, because you just never know when the ego is going to just rear up. And when it does, it just feels like it's a very strong call to go into deep prayer, because if things start to feel unstable, and most everybody can relate to those things, just in relationships, when it starts to get really unstable, that's like a danger zone, where you think, I don't know if I'm ready for my dark side to come out now. I don't think our relationship can handle that, and people kind of intuitively can feel that at times, but we have had many different practices and things that we've done with all these collaborations over the years, so it's always been a bit of a fine-tuning. But I do remember many years when pretty much every day there'd be some kind of storm coming, and we were just like, wow, we never realized we were just inviting this unconscious darkness up, and how treacherous it sometimes felt. It felt like you were a fireman putting out fires 2 or 3 times a day. After you get one big fire put out, and you just, okay, take a rest here, and then another. Oh, we got another one. And yet I think too, for us, we've just stayed with the mind training and practiced with the Course, and just kept calling on the Spirit to lead us and guide us, and those kind of things just unfolded. Yeah.
Can you say a little more about I guess the awakening process, where I've heard you say, and for a long time I felt like, okay, there's 8 billion of us, each of us have to awaken, and then I've heard you say, no, we know bodies don't awaken to start with, and we know there's one Spirit, one Christ, that's seemingly split mind, that's projecting the illusion that we seem to be a part of, and yet I seem to have my practice, right? And so is what feels like my awakening is the awakening, and is it cumulative? Is it, can you say a little bit more about, do you know what I'm asking?
Yeah. It's actually just one mind, but through the ego's lens, it seems like 8 billion private minds and bodies. But probably the most telling line from Jesus, the way he can describe it is so amazing, is he says, everyone makes an ego for himself and for everyone he meets. Mm. Oh, that's a beautiful sentence, because it is pointing back to, it's an invention. So all of the egos are part of the invention. That's kind of how it hides itself. It seems to be legion, but it's actually one. It's kind of like a holographic universe where there's just one distortion, but the distortion seems to be magnified in many fractals. And what an ingenious way of hiding itself, because then you can get lost in the fractals, trying to think, or even depressed, looking at the fractals and thinking, this is so complex, how is it ever going to unwind? But there's a lot of lines in the Course that just basically point to that basically it's one distortion, but it takes a lot of faith and trust and willingness to go completely beyond that distortion and not be fooled by any form the distortion seems to take. So it's really just one mind, but many forms of the ego, in the projection. So, and even when you get to an idea like the dreamer of the dream, when I traveled around, people would say, wait a minute, am I in your dream or are you in my dream? But the very question, presumes multiple dreams. And there's really not. There's just, he says in the Course, you are the dreamer of the world of dreams. No other cause does it have or ever will. So he's clearly stating that the phase that precedes a full-blown awakening to God is awareness of dreaming. He even says at one point, awareness of dreaming is the function of God's teachers. So now he's using awareness of dreaming as synonymous with forgiveness. Right. Because most of the times when people think of forgiveness, they think of forgiving people. I need to forgive my mother, I need to forgive my uncle. It's seen like forgiving personalities, but when you equate forgiveness with awareness of dreaming, then that means, okay, I'm just willing to be taken to an experience that this is literally a dream, like a movie, watching a movie in a movie theater. Now, I think practically, though, it still comes back to authentic guidance, because I do feel like that is the most direct pathway back to the light, is a pathway of listen and follow. So I know for myself, the starting to practice following guidance and discerning the guidance and gaining an experience from listening and following, that has been, I think, the most important expedient in the whole thing in terms of a speed up. Because even he's got a section called I Need Do Nothing, where he talks about long periods of meditation and contemplation and fighting against sin. He's saying these will all work, but your way will be different. A holy relationship is given you as a means of saving time. And holy relationship seems to involve a lot of open, transparent, direct communication. And that's why I felt the guidance I got from Jesus was just practice no people-pleasing and no private thoughts. So even when we've gone to the communist China, the man who brought A Course in Miracles to China, basically he said, wow, your no people-pleasing and no private thoughts remind me of nothing real can be threatened, nothing unreal exists. And he started seeing that was like a practical application of that summary of the Course. And so I think that's been part of the acceleration because when it's so direct, when the communication is so direct about the thoughts and the feelings, also the ego reactions are more direct because there's not dancing around things, hemming and hawing and hiding things. Just come right out and say it. And then the reactions come, and then the opportunities to forgive and let it go come faster when you're more forthright, when you're more transparent. Because the people-pleasing and the hiding is emotional, and all the types of hiding are just delay maneuvers by the ego. The ego really cannot stand open, direct communication. It's a bed of lies. It's always trying to distort things and make things more complicated than they are, and twist them around and turn them around, and it's all part of a delay maneuver. So a lot of people will say, it's really intense emotionally. Like we just had some new people coming when I was down in Mexico recently, and I knew when some of them were landing. There was a couple coming in and landing there, and then there were people that were already there. And I think the day after the couple landed, that they went in the very next day to an expression session, and I think one of the women that was there in the community just said in the expression session, "Oh, by the way, I'm attracted to your partner," to the man. And the woman was crying, and I thought, oh man, the first day you just get one night's sleep, and the next day there's something like that. That is not typical. I know recently they were talking about, somebody came there recently and said, oh yeah, I remember the first time I came to the Casa de Milagros, that there were 3 people there, and the one woman spoke up and said, yep, I'm going to share first, and then my ex-husband and his new girlfriend will share after me. And they were all like, what? They just could not believe that there would be so much openness around raw emotions and relationships like that. Usually it's like people go their distances and try to work through the emotional traumas and everything, and this was like the first gathering. So people would come in, or sometimes I remember Elisa would say, like when she first visited me at the Peace House, she named off like the first 4 movies I watched with her. One of them was Dark City, and she just said it was bizarre that I would show such deep movies 1, 2, 3, 4 in a row. But in one sense, it's like getting your feet wet. It's really jumping in the deep end. But in one sense, it does speed things up. But emotionally, it can be very raw because we're just most of us are not accustomed to that. Most of us are accustomed to dancing around things.
Yeah, we had at our in Mexico, one of the most really bizarre moments for me in an expression session was when, I won't say her name, but this lady said to the facilitator, "I hate you." Right? Right? But here's the interesting thing, is that there was other people in the room that were feeling the same thing, and then everyone started to say it. And so there was just so much growing from that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So much growth.
Yeah.
To dissolve that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just getting over the initial shock of something. Yeah. Yeah. And I've been privileged to visit a lot of communities around. I was over in Findhorn one time. Kirsten and I were there, and and I think the original inspiration for Findhorn, what's her name? Irene Caddy, I think was her name. Eileen Caddy, Eileen Caddy, yes. Okay. And she had passed away, but a number of the founders who were up in their 80s with white hair, when we went there, Kirsten and I did a gathering. A lot of the founders were just sparkling and laughing and everything, and saying to us, "We haven't felt the same kind of energy since Eileen was here with us," because she was a very direct conduit and channel for the Holy Spirit. So she would her husband would kick her out of the little shack that they lived in, a little trailer, and then she would go off to the toilet to meditate, and then she would get all these downloads for the whole community of what the community was supposed to do for the day, and they all would react when it was very direct communication. But they did tell us when we were there that it's kind of like, the ego is afraid of direct communication, and it's afraid of losing its existence. So it's quite good at trying to water down and compromise the teachings and placate and try to guard against the awakening. And that's what had happened over the decades. They said originally they just was all shared property, and it was such intense communications and intense rapid undoings. But since that time, the community had grown, and then they had their own private ownership and private properties, and occasionally have board meetings to talk about who could come in and who they wanted and who they didn't want. It got very political over the decades, but they would still remember how strong the spirit was and how healing and rapid the healing was at the very beginning. But then the ego just tried to shut it down by trying to make it as political as possible. And I think with a lot of communities, that is the danger, is when the ego gets too threatened, it just tries to make things political. It just tries to divide things up, like you were talking about with your family, take sides, point the finger, blame. It's got a whole strategy for trying to guard against authentic awakening. And it does take a lot of focus to stay the course, to really say, let's come back here now. Okay, there's nobody to blame here. We're going through some intense emotions. Everybody needs to be able to let up what they need to let up, and kind of bring in the stability to keep the ship afloat, so the ship doesn't capsize. And I think I read statistics sometimes where they said, I think it was about 85% of all communities, spiritual communities, fail, and then another 10% usually spin off into something that's not as focused as it was originally. It's more of a watered down approach. And there's maybe 4 or 5% of communities that actually continue on with that level of disclosure, because it's so rapid and it's so tumultuous. So I think, the monastery's gone through lots of shifts and changes over the years, but it seems very safe and stable, Paulina was just there. It's a small group. I guess was there maybe 10 people or something there.
Yeah, 9 now.
9 now on 49 acres.
Yeah.
9 people on 49 acres. And I think Mexico has a little bit different flavor now, because Mexico there's a lot of young people, maybe in their 20s and 30s, that have just felt drawn there and have a lot of skills, and they're working on collaborative programs, online programs, audiobooks, all kinds of projects where they can pool together, and even doing editing of some of the deep teachings when you have to go through and edit it, like for an audiobook or an ebook or something like that, then you get your mind goes engaged through the ideas, which I did a lot of too. I would record not on an iPhone, but back in the day, cassette recorder, and then I'd go home and edit the talk. I would edit the tape, then I would upload it, then I would have to listen to see. So I had to go through it 2 or 3 times. So I got to be there when the talk was coming through, and then with the editing process, and editing, uploading, and that, it's a way of saturating our mind with pretty radical ideas. The Course has such radical ideas that, sometimes you have to go through them, and, okay, try that again. I've had people that would transcribe, they would try to listen to the audio talk, and they would just say, you completely lost me. It was like, I just was listening, but I'm gone, I'm lost. And they would listen to it maybe 5-6 times, still not get it. Then they would start transcribing it, and transcribe it, and then edit it, and then edit it, and then maybe after like the 8th or 9th time through, bing, something would break through into their awareness, because the ego is so guarded against these ideas. I mean, Jesus is very direct with his teachings, and he comes at it like a diamond with many angles, hoping that you'll just find one angle that you get it, and you go, that's it. But there's such a defense against the teachings that's what I've found. I've had to go through it over and over, and that's why I've enjoyed traveling, teaching it, counseling, Zoom things, all the digital things that have emerged even more so since the pandemic, just gives an opportunity. But I think it's pretty easy nowadays. I know you both will download a talk on a movie and then go searching and just find the movie and queue it up in your cabin up in Minnesota and set up your own movie gathering where you can pause at any point and talk. Yeah, it's kind
Speaking of that, I'm going to do a commercial. 'Cause, we're going to have a retreat in Minnesota, and hopefully I can just get the mailing list from you. But we'll put it out to everybody and invite you to do a workshop in Minnesota. We were trying to do one in Boulder, but
We were trying to do one in Minnesota. We were going to do both for a little while, but it just was too soon.
But we'll invite you all to Minnesota. On the lake. It's real beautiful, and you'll be able to swim if you want to. And
We have a lovely setting now.
Yeah. So hopefully next fall, if it works out with David's and Swallows.
Is it a couple cabins, large cabins, or how? There's places to stay nearby.
We have 2 cabins, so you most likely will be in the smaller one, and then we'll rent a VRBO, big home, and maybe
There's some really nice,
several
big,
homes, and
lots of housing options.
they're just a half a mile away from our cabin. You can even walk between them. So
Okay.
yeah.
And then the gathering place could be the yoga studio. The yoga studio. I'm just,
We have a yoga studio.
yeah, how
nearby,
that's,
too.
we spent the last 6
Oh.
years,
Uh-huh.
so this is kind of the funny,
No, we shouldn't talk about
yeah.
that.
Do you want to hear the story? Or?
No.
Yeah.
I want to hear even more.
I can make it really fast. We were driving in to our cabin once, and we saw this for sale sign on this old, dilapidated building that used to be a bank. And Lori just got this idea: we need to buy that. And so we got this ridiculous deal on it, but we spent the last 6 years fixing it up to be a yoga studio. We just finished it this summer, and so it's an old bank building, so it's very safe. And it's maybe, I don't know, maybe a little bit bigger than this room, twice the size of this room maybe. And so anyway, that's one option, but there's going to be other options to gather.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's nice. So, and this is actually in more towards northern Minnesota, right? Not down Minneapolis, St. Paul. That's more the
It's 3.5 hours northwest of Minneapolis.
Okay. And Minnesota's a state of a lot of lakes, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot
Only
of lakes.
10,000.
10,000 lakes. Okay, yeah, that's an interesting one. And you're thinking more in the summertime, not in this,
Yeah, we're thinking,
not in the ice bowl.
we're thinking fall because the
Fall.
water's still super warm, like maybe beginning of September-ish.
Okay, okay.
Still summer.
Yeah.
Well, the kids are back in school,
We'll
you know, that kind of thing.
yeah, the time will be given.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
no question.
We're sort of having the same idea because we also have a cabin on the water. I mean, what is it up with that? But yeah, a sanctuary type place, and we would love to do the same thing. And a lot of people here are very close by, so we're only about 5 hours away from here. So that's another possibility. Yeah.
Where are you?
It's actually Magnolia Springs, Alabama. It's by Fairhope, Alabama.
It's 13 minutes away from the beaches.
The Gulf of Mexico.
Gorgeous Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's about 30 minutes from me.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Wow.
Yes.
So
Uh-huh.
we might be collaborating.
Collaboration.
Mm.
So we got Minnesota, Alabama. Okay.
Cabins.
Yeah, lots of cabins and water.
Cabins, yeah.
On the Gulf Coast,
Yeah.
Yeah.
the beaches.
Yeah. They are gorgeous.
Well, I think we should do a cruise with David. About 4,000 of us. This is my idea.
4,000.
Yeah, we're at the port.
Just take over the whole cruise boat.
We're at the port where all the cruise ships are. So
That's a fun
they
idea.
hold about 4,000 people, and I'm sure we could gather those 4,000 of us.
Yeah.
That'd be fun, wouldn't it?
Have a
Do
movie
cruise?
theater, in the cruise ship, right?
Yeah. Have a movie
Oh,
every day
wow.
after dinner. And that'd be
We
fun.
just sail up into the
So
sunset.
that's my idea. for
Frank's
mine.
like, wow.
Great idea.
Yeah, yeah.
So I had a question. There's a favorite quote in the Course that is, "The light of the world brings peace to every mind through my forgiveness."
Mhm.
And it feels, I just love that. It just feels so beautiful. And I have to admit, I'm a little bit of an activist against corporate and government corruption, you know. And I just wonder, if I forgive enough, if I get all the way to the end of that forgiveness, do all these things I read about in the newspaper that are so horrible, you know, do they all go away as soon as I achieve total forgiveness? Because that's sort of what it's saying.
Yeah. It is a perceptual hallucination. So if you got back past the web of multiplicity and all the stuff that seems to be legion, then you go back. Then when Jesus, in the Course, he says, "When I awoke, you were with me." So he's bringing it to it's a perceptual problem. It's like a cracked perception that is the problem, and then a healed, holistic perception, which I was talking about the other night, is what that is. So he's even got a workbook lesson. He says, you know, when I arise and accept forgiveness, then all minds arise. So it's literally, if he says everyone makes an ego for himself and for everyone he meets, the reverse of that is when you forgive the ego, you forgive all the egos.
So that means any one of us, any individual can save the world.
Yeah, that's he does say that how many teachers of God does it take to save the world? He says one, but that one is not a body or in a body. So he's clearly pointing to the mind. He's not saying there's going to be avatars and people that come along, you know, more like back in the days of Jesus, you know, in Judaism, in the Jewish religion, there was a very strong Messiah construct, belief that the Messiah, a personal Messiah, would come along and would set the Israelites free, would set the captives free. And so when Jesus actually went into the temple and started reading scripture, he was reading about the Messiah, and then he really stirred things up when he said that day has come. And that's when these rabbis turned into angry, like, how dare you, and how dare you speak of what are you saying about our father Abraham? And well, before Abraham was, I am. Oh, the rocks were coming out. They were not a nonviolent crowd after that, because it was upending traditions of linear time. Even in a lot of Eastern traditions, they have lineage things. This guru and then this one, and there's a lot of pride involved in the lineage. But Jesus was saying, no, there's a light prior to the lineage. So that's basically it. So that also is a good reason, though, to give your whole heart to something. When you on the surface, if you told somebody, I am come to be the savior of the world, people react to those kind of ideas. But Jesus even says, that he says, you are the goal the world is searching for. And he's not talking about a person, but he's talking about the real you is the goal the world is searching for. And that can even sound arrogant, just that sentence. You are the goal the world is searching for. Because they did have what was that TV series, was it a few years ago, called Messiah? I watched some aspects of that, and people still talk about that, that it really stirred a lot of deep emotions up. And Gabriel, you saw it.
Yeah, just one season, right?
Yeah.
I'm waiting for the second, but
I think it was so loaded with...
We have enough messiahs. So.
Yeah, that's it. We have all these other series. So, but it's worth, if you just look at it from a perspective of peace of mind, that what would be worth peace of mind? Just giving your whole heart, everything, your whole devotion to find peace of mind. No small gift, they always say. Peace of mind is no small gift.
Doesn't the Course say, there's nowhere I end and you begin? Well, then it says, if you think bodies separate you, you're insane. It's so hard for us to see that, but it's true. I feel like so deeply that is true. Because he was talking, there's 8 billion people. But if we see that, we're insane. It's just straight up, you're insane. But, so is it like, sometimes I think of, Star Trek, the holodeck. Is that like what we're living in, kind of? Like, it reminds me of that sometimes.
Yeah, I think, like I was talking a bit about the mind, most in society, most people think of, the mind, that's what the psychiatrists and psychologists work with, if people, we'll say if mainstream people, if everyday people, let's say everybody, politicians, construction workers, kindergarten teachers, if most everyone had the experience that psychotherapists have, where let's say they would see clients for 8 hours a day. If most people had the experience of seeing clients for 8 hours a day, they would start to notice things very quickly about projection, about the commonalities. Like people who even go to 12-step groups and people go and they give their leads and everybody says, they basically are very transparent. And then pretty quickly, if you go to 12-step groups and you're there for a while, you start to realize, wow, everybody has the same issues. It's when you hide behind it and think you have a personal identity and your issues are different from all the rest, then it seems like the 8 billion are very different, unique, and different from the personality self. But psychotherapists who listen to clients every day, they can see the patterns, and people in 12-step groups, people can see the patterns more quickly because you can see what people are talking about. They may start off talking like my problems are different than yours, and my problems are different than everyone else's. But pretty quickly, if people had that much communication and interactivity on a daily basis, they would start to look at something like A Course in Miracles and go, oh yeah, this really makes sense, because it's describing that there's some kind of connection and there's some kind of patterns going on here. Oh, so you're just using this one word to describe a bunch of patterns, ego.
Yeah.
And then suddenly it starts to become, the more you work with it, less and less of a personal ego to more like, whoa, this is a diseased way of thinking. And you start to recognize what that diseased way of thinking. And that's the first step in escaping it. You know, Jesus says you escape from the darkness and shadows by looking at it. He says the more you look at fear, the less you see of it. Meaning the more you look in your mind at the fear, the less you see of it projected in the world. The happier you become, the happier the world becomes. The more lit up you become, the more lit up the world becomes. And then it starts to be like this whole cosmos starts to be just one thing. Like, wow, I just need to withdraw my mind from this way of thinking. And you could even call it the world's way of thinking. So little by little, you start to realize that you're facing something that you have to really expose. It's what keeps the ego going is by being hidden, and by exposing it seems to be more that you realize, like Jesus says, the more you look at it and expose it, you'll realize you don't want to believe in it. Like this thing does not mean you well. It's a death wish. You may think there's positive and negative aspects to it, but the more you raise it up,
you get hooked in.
Yeah.
Even like the political stuff and the activism stuff, it's really all ego based. It's like all about hatred more than anything. And like people think it's okay to hate the right target, but it's really not.
Mm-hmm.
It's really not. It doesn't matter if it's a greedy corporate businessman or a corrupt politician. It's still like your brother. It's not okay. There is no suitable place to target your hate. And that seems to be the whole political situation. And it's so easy to fall for.
Yeah.
But really, it doesn't matter who it is.
Yeah.
Well, Eckhart would say even choosing football teams and having opposing
Yeah.
ideas. Something so
But you
simple.
know, that's a game.
Yeah.
But still, people get hatred.
Yeah.
Even what you said,
Mhm.
like you feeling like you were unworthy of something, or
Right.
not good enough. We all, that's all of us.
Mhm.
It's not just you.
Yeah.
We all have the same problem.
Yeah.
That was so cool, the way Georgia Bird in the movie just reconciled with everybody. And she ends up there on the ledge with like her worst enemy, right? The guy who owned the company that treated her so poorly. And she's out there trying to convince him to not jump off the ledge. I mean,
Yeah.
she did that with every single character.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
was great.
Yeah, that was
The
beautiful.
politician, what was the woman's name? The Gunther.
Gunther. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gunther was pretty hard-shelled until she read the note about I'm dying.
Yeah,
Then
and
she
she just melted.
she totally melted. She was the first one to deliver the news about it's a misdiagnosis. She was just so happy. Yeah, that's it, underneath it. But it's pretty radical when it comes to the teachings of Jesus on defenselessness, because it's a common belief that that it's okay to defend yourself in certain cases. That's even in the court of law, self-defense is seen as something justifiable. I was talking to a friend of mine. I think she lives over in Germany with her husband and her children, but had studied the Course for a while, and she started to realize that it was just the very thought of defending anything, defending a self or defending anything, that was this great temptation. Because, people would say to her, well, if somebody invades your country, like what's going on with Russia and Ukraine, people were saying, of course you fight back and you defend. And she was actually going into some deep experiences where she was just starting to feel the valuableness of defenselessness, of like Jesus, his teachings were pretty clear. If somebody smites you on one cheek, turn the other cheek. Love your enemies, and in the Course, he's got the longest lesson in his entire workbook is titled, "If I defend myself, I am attacked." And in the world, defense and attack are seen as opposites. And he's saying, no, it's just the same thing. It's the ego. If you're defensive or you're attacking, you're an ego. And the whole point is to transcend the ego. So, practically speaking, all of us have those certain points in our life where it seems like somebody's physically, verbally, psychologically, somehow attacking. And then Jesus is saying, please, please, please join with me and see it as a call for love. Please look at whatever you're seeing on the surface, the angry face or the veins sticking out of the neck or the eyeball sticking out or the loud voice or whatever. And he's saying, please, please see this as a call for love. That underneath the cover, the appearance, there's a soul, there's a mind crying out for help. Please don't take the surface seriously. Please love me. Please love me. And so basically he's teaching us that there's only two orders of thought that the Holy Spirit can recognize. Everything is either love or a call for love. And when you're with the Holy Spirit, you will always love, because if it's a call for love, you will give love. And if it's love, you'll feel the love. And then the ego invented the third one, which is attack. So the Course is nothing more than a purification of heart and a rinsing of the mind to get to a place of not how do you handle attack, but seeing the impossibility of attack. If really we're one mind, that one mind, it takes two to have an attacker and an attackee. It takes two to have a victim, a victimizer. And this is such a deep mind training in saying, no, see the call for love, see the call for love. Even with Jesus, with the Pharisees and the Sadducees and people plotting to crucify him or to trap him or to trip him up at every angle, he was just so tuned in to prayer with God to just show me the call for love, show me the call for love. And then he would basically be giving these beautiful talks with lots of examples. Even when people say, well, Jesus got angry, he threw the tables over in the temple, and I said, well, he says in the Course, anger is never justified and pardon is always justified. So if he threw tables over, and probably he did, I said, I could throw some tables over too with a big smile on my face. You don't associate the anger with the tables. It was just there was commerce. They were buying and selling animals to burn as sacrifices for God. And Jesus had to make a point. This is not the way God is. God does not require burning animals to quench something from God. He was just basically making an extreme point. Tossing tables, coins flying everywhere, birds flying out of cages. I bet he had a lot of fun, actually. It's just really, let's toss it up here like this is a temple. This is where we're supposed to worship God. This is not a place of commerce. So I think the key is emotional honesty, and just to start to notice when you start to get upset, annoyed, irritated, then that's the time to join in prayer and just pray and say, please show me this in a different way, or please show me what I believe that I am making myself angry, instead of trying to justify what they did their behavior, their action, that's the way the ego does. It always tries to build a case immediately. Well, of course I'm upset because da-da-da-da-da. And Jesus is saying, don't go down those roads. Because, you're always angry for no good reason. There isn't an actual reason to be angry, ever. And there's always a reason to forgive. Because it's your own perceptual problem. It's not like somebody's doing something to provoke you. You always hate yourself, and then you try to find a scapegoat, to blame for the hatred. In fact, in the Bible, I sometimes wondered, where did this phrase scapegoat come from? And they said, well, when you go way back to the Old Testament and the old days of the Jewish tradition, that they had a practice where Aaron, the high priest of the tribe or of the village, would gather all the sins of the people together for the whole year and put the sins of the people onto the head of a goat. And then they would chase the goat out of the village. That's a very interesting ritual which demonstrates projection. This goat. Put it on the head of a goat and then chase the goat out. And then many, many centuries later, we hear scapegoat. And that comes from that ancient tradition.
Literally a scapegoat.
Yeah. There's a movie I showed too. I remember I was down in the rural areas, the mountains of Brazil. Was it Brazil? No, it was the mountains of Colombia. And I was with a group of maybe 70 people. And they were very talkative women, Latin American women. And so I was with them for 3 or 4 days, and they'd love to talk. It just was nonstop talking. And so I said, okay, now we're going to go a little deeper. And they said, how? How do we go deeper? I said, well, let's have like 3/4 days of silence. And so they were, ooh. So they went through like 3/4 day of silence, and then I said, we'll watch a movie together. And they're like, okay, we're about ready to burst. What is the name of the movie? And I said, it's called The Last Sin Eater. I don't know if you've ever seen The Last Sin Eater. Oh, it's a good one. Because it's a community that basically is based on the same kind of scapegoating principle, that someone in the community has to eat the sins of all the people in the community, and basically this one who gets appointed to be the sin eater is basically chased out of the community and ostracized, takes on all the sins of the whole community and then is ostracized. And in this movie, the whole scheme, the whole ritual gets exposed, where there's a girl in the movie and she just gets to the bottom of it, and she just at one point says to the whole community, there's going to be no more cheating and no more lies, like basically pops the whole construct. And that's really what we're doing when we work with the Course. We're popping the whole construct of the ego belief system, seeing that none of it has any value. It disguises itself as if it's your friend. It disguises yourself as if it's helping you, but it's out of the side of its mouth, it's whispering, this is death. But it tries to make pleasant forms, comforting forms to the mind, so the mind will continue to believe in it, but then it's very much it's a trickster all the way. Some of you have seen what's the movie with the Revolver? Have you seen Revolver? Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's they really expose the lies of the ego in that movie. Very, very, very deep. Yeah.
Was that one written by a Course student or a teacher? Or is that just a Hollywood thing?
Well, the maker of the movie was Madonna's ex-husband, Guy Ritchie. Yeah, he's had some very, very profound movies. So somehow I think whoever wrote it obviously they have all the people talking about the ego at the end of the movie. So it was very conscious to do that movie, and we've used it, clips and everything from that movie. It's very, very good at exposing the ego.
Yeah,
It's a mind bender.
Richie, he's into some things because he's friends of Sting, and even King Arthur, the way he did it, there's a scene on King Arthur that, oh my God, like it's amazing. That he has to face the snake, and so that he's facing all his fears. That I think that scene is just magical.
Yeah.
And I think he put so much mind and heart in that movie that I see the magic behind that King Arthur that he did.
Yeah. Some scenes stay with you. There's like that Way of the Peaceful Warrior story of Dan Millman, and there's the clock tower scene, which is just brilliantly done.
I watched an interview of the author of that story not long ago in that YouTube channel that I was telling you about right now, and very interesting. Anyway, since I'm talking, I would like to address that I have a hard time with prayer. My mom, she always had like prayer groups and stuff, and I seen her prayers doing miracles. I mean, it's amazing. And she always asks, pray for so and so. And I have a very hard time with prayer because, for example, let's pray for our country, right? But I don't feel like praying because I feel like we are all going through something for a reason. And in the darkness, it's when we actually evolve. So I think I'm feeling the answer. So the prayer will be to pray for people's understanding of why they're sick or why they're going through those difficulties, right?
Yeah, I think I mentioned earlier that Jesus did this pamphlet called Song of Prayer, but really the essence of prayer is in your innermost chambers of your desire, what you want, and when people pray for specifics, like they pray for specific outcomes to an election, or even pray for people's symptoms to leave, if they're praying for somebody who's in the hospital or whatever. And what Jesus says is, as long as you believe in the ego and you believe in lack, you cannot help but pray for specifics, because you can't pray beyond the level of awareness where you're at. So if you are the ego is a belief in lack. So for those in the realm of lack, they do pray for specifics. You probably have seen it with your mother and everything. But what Jesus says is, when you pray for a specific outcome, you're really praying for the past to be repeated in some way that you prefer. So he's really so cleverly pointing out that you're praying for an outcome that you prefer, believing that you know which outcome is best. And he's saying you don't. In fact, the mind that's asleep and dreaming, it needs help, because it doesn't know what it's praying for. It doesn't even know the depth of the healing. The healing's in the mind. It's not the healing in the body. But when you pray for specifics, you pray for an outcome that you believe is helpful. So even when people pray to manifest money or soulmates or health in terms of body terms or whatever, they're still praying with a belief system that they know already what is best. And what you're saying is on the track, because really they're praying to be shown what's going on within themselves, where they're choosing something. Even a symptom is a selection in the mind. But Jesus says that in some cases the patient is too afraid to be healed, because it would shatter their whole self-concept, their whole self-image, if they were healed. So they actually, healing must wait until they actively invite it until they're willing. And that's what Jesus did too. You know, a lot of places he would go and people would come to him and there's healings, healings, healings. But it's said in the Bible when Jesus went to Nazareth, there were no healings. And of course Nazareth is where he was raised, so people were probably like, don't give me this Messiah stuff. I watched you grow up from a little baby. I know who you are. You're not the Messiah. You're Mary and Joseph's kid. You can see. So they wouldn't recognize what was available to them because of their past associations were so strong onto who he was.
So right now I am praying for something. This is very bizarre because the last time I did an oil change, it was in Miami, and now we having like freezing temperatures. I'm like, oh, my car doesn't have any antifreeze, and I say, and so then I ask a couple of people here, do I need to crank my car? Because so now I have these thoughts that do not leave my mind. I say, will my car work tomorrow? And I say, stop thinking about that. But that is dusting off. Like this is like spiritual bypassing. So now I am praying not for my car to be okay tomorrow, but I am going within and I say, what is my fear? I have a fear of being left alone on the road because the car represents me and the road represents my life. So I am afraid of being alone on the road.
Yeah.
And so this is how I need to pray. Holy Spirit, I am aware that I believe that I am alone, which this is not true, right?
Yeah. It's the secret of true prayer, Jesus says, is to forget the things you think you need. So that's why when I was sharing some of those parables earlier in the day, when I was out on the road, I didn't consciously wake up and think, oh, today I'm going to pick up 3 hitchhikers. You see, it's more of a wide open canvas, like, all right, Jesus, let's have some fun today. Let's have miracles. Today should be used for miracles. And that takes your mind away from the fear thoughts. Oh my gosh, my car and my survival, and it's cold, and the fear thoughts can go there. Like, for example, tomorrow, I still haven't talked so much with Igor and Katerina, but tomorrow's Christmas, right? Yeah. There's one friend of ours, Gemini Land, who was going to be making contact with us. She's homeless, and she just wrote to me when I was flying down here. I'm staying with a friend over. I lost my house in Clearwater. It's been sold, and I've been evicted, and she just said, I thought, write to David. So she wrote to me. So I think she's going to be coming tomorrow. Also, I think today, this is the official end of the retreat. Today, 22nd to the 24th. But if any of you happen to be around tomorrow, we still have a table and a screen. At 11 o'clock, it's going to be a showing of The Chosen. A Jesus episode. It's just coming hot off the press tomorrow, and so I was going to be joining with the community back in the back room to watch The Chosen, and then we were going to have a community discussion about what came up, about faith, about trust, about whatever. That's a possibility tomorrow too. Tomorrow night, we're having a Christmas show from Mexico too. I think around 6 o'clock our time. So there's a few Christmas things going on, but even though this is the official end, it's like tomorrow we're waking up and we're saying, Jesus, here's another day to shine the light for you, and that's it. And we could certainly hold you too in our thoughts and prayers, because we could tell that's what you just want, a happy, joyful day, not to encounter any survival struggles. Yeah, that's it.
Your car must have antifreeze. It would have overheated, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's just my mind.
It has antifreeze. hands are trying to swing. They will drive in my head.
My mind trying to scare me, you know.
Antifreeze thoughts.
Yeah. But you see, then that is the thing about form and content. You know, it's not the form, it's the content
really.
that is in me that I'm like
content.
projecting into my car. You know.
Yeah, Monica, this is part of, you explained to us, this is part of this is a big trip of trust. That was what the original feeling and intention was. You were coming on the road and just saying, okay, all right, Jesus, here we go.
Yeah, this has been very miraculous, you know, because I had a feeling that I was here for something, and like I said, we are like among 25 people, and I connected with 3 that I can see why they are here for, you know, the collaborations and context is this magic of Christmas, you know.
Yeah, and I did start to read through your book that you gave, and I was reading in there, you were talking about how your dad was an American, and so he had a bit of skepticism with it, and your mother was very religious, from Brazil, and the eclectic, wide range of experiences. So there you go, we have a little bit of American skepticism and a little bit of Brazilian open-mindedness with religion, and you mix it all together, and Monica shows up. Here I am, world, with your books.
Interesting script.
Yes, it is. It is very interesting.
And I connected with somebody that is going to help me edit the book. So here's the collaboration.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah, you mentioned too that you wanted to go through that again.
Yeah. Because it's a very thin line between fearing being egocentric about being a book author and minimizing myself. So it's a very thin line. So it makes me feel so comfortable that I'm not doing this alone. I'm doing collaborations and mighty companions.
That's beautiful.
And she's the one that came to me this morning, and she said that she was reading through my book, and she made me feel so.
You're onto something.
Thank you. So that's why I'm here. See?
Yeah.
So that's why I'm here.
Yeah. That's it. Those are collaborations in action right away, springing forth immediately. Yeah.
David, I have a topic here in my mind. Maybe we can talk about. There is God family. I keep hearing this since yesterday, like God family, and I'd like to hear your experience with that. Like some things that you shared here tonight really actually answered me about that part in the Course that Jesus says that each member of God's family needs to return. I always thought it was like, oh, how, like, it's inevitable, like, there is in the mind, like, 7 billion, I don't know, people had to return. How does work? And then, like, going deeper with the Course, I had this feeling that he was actually talking about forgiveness, like how I integrate everybody in my mind without, like, this fragmented perception, and having more holistic and really experience that we are all one. And but I don't know, there's something that is still, I feel there's something still missing to really experience this, like, God family. And it's so symbolic because it's, I don't know, I always had this feeling, like this weird feeling that I didn't belong to my family. And every Christmas, like, I don't know, I really, I didn't fit in, you know, and so and my whole life was like, what's going on? And I know, like, family concept is being, like, unwinding from my mind, and I've been having this deep experience, like, with joining, collaboration, and I was there, like, waiting and watching, like, all the collaboration, everybody putting the table together for this gathering, and I was like, and I keep hearing, like, God family, saying, okay, what is this, Jesus? Like, I'm not sure if I'm really getting, like, what do you mean? Because, I think my question is, like, how do we experience this without having like people thoughts. It's, I don't know, it feels distant for me, like this experience. And I felt to call my dad before I came here, and he was, it's so beautiful, because even for him, like this concept of families being aligned, I think it's like there's like few Christmas that we've not spent together as usual. I think this is the third maybe. And right now, my sister's boyfriend, he got sick, probably COVID, and she couldn't be able to spend with him too. And now he's spending with her, with his wife's sons. And for him, it's a completely different like experience of family. And he lost like their parents like a few years ago. So yeah, I've been watching like all these symbols, and it feels like something is really missing to understand this.
Yeah. Well, if you just took it away from the people and you thought of things in terms of vibration, some things like with matter seems to be energy vibrating at a slower rate, and then when it goes into higher and higher rates, we move into gases and other things. And your group back in Brazil was it Frequency d'Amour. What if we just talked about the family of God in terms of frequency, like attracts like? And when you're out there and you're looking at this table and all these people contributing together, some people have been calling it like-minded, but what if it's a frequency? What if you're vibrating at a frequency, almost like colors of light in the rainbow, or can be different frequencies, but there's certain frequencies that you're drawn to, you resonate with, you feel a kinship, with certain frequencies. And to me, this is part of the natural arising in awareness through consciousness, that consciousness is the domain of the ego, Jesus says, because it has levels and because it can be trained. Spirit, the only levels of spirit are what we call the Trinity, the Father, Son, the Holy Ghost, but he says they're all pure spirit, and these levels do not conflict whatsoever. So these are not conflictual levels, but levels of consciousness is a different thing because they're not the same. The levels have different frequencies. Just like if you were playing an instrument, or a harp, or a xylophone, or whatever, and you were playing certain notes, and certain notes you could just feel like your heart moving and resonating with certain notes and certain frequencies. So, to me, that's part of the family of God, is that we're used to thinking about relationships more in terms of material things, in terms of DNA, in terms of genetics, in terms of genealogy, in terms of concepts and roles, mother, father, sister, brother, aunt, uncle. You see, that's all basically set up by the ego. The ego sets up the stratifications, the ego sets up the roles, the ego passes out the parts. And anything that the ego is involved with is involving keeping you from the light. Everything the ego does as a death wish is to keep you from the light. So, to me, when Jesus at one point in the Course says, "You will not go on from here alone, mighty companions travel with you," he's talking frequency. He's talking, you resonate. We've had some people here share, wow, it's so great to be in a place where there's like-mindedness, there's acceptance, where you can talk freely and converse freely about things without getting into a big political debate, without jumping onto sides. To me, that's a frequency thing. The more you go higher and higher in frequency, you feel a resonance and a connection that feels very natural. And to me, that's when Jesus says the family of God, he's talking about a vibrational connection. I think probably from a lot of books I've read that Jesus did feel a very strong vibrational connection with Mary Magdalene. Out of, back then in the time of the planet, he just, it was kind of, I think I've read some channel material recently where it was like right when he was getting ready for his public ministry, he happened to go with the apostles to Magdala. But I think he probably felt that when he and Mary came together and just met each other for the first time, there was probably some kind of recognition. And that recognition had to do with the frequency. It had nothing to do with the physicality. It was just the frequency of awakening. And throughout many of the teachings of Jesus, even the Mary Magdalene movie, she seems to be pretty open-minded when some of the apostles are trying to say, oh, Jesus is going to show his might and power and overthrow Rome, and they thought he was going to establish an earthly kingdom. She didn't really react like that she believed in an earthly kingdom. She didn't know at the time exactly what he was talking about, but she was very open-minded. She was curious. Her vibration was so close with Jesus's that she was very curious. And when you bring seemingly people together that have similar vibrations, the chances of going higher vibrationally are much greater. High vibrations and low vibrations don't work very well together. Remember the Beach Boys? Gotta keep those loving good vibrations happening with her. Even the Beach Boys were singing about the vibrations. I'm picking up good vibrations. She's giving me. So I think, and it's very similar. Like if you were playing a sport, and you were trying to become better at the sport, you would advance more quickly playing and collaborating with people who were closer to your level of sport. You would go much faster than if you were playing down. And so I think spiritually, sports can involve competition, but spiritually it's more like, our vibrations come closer and we mix, and we can be used together by the Holy Spirit in ways that lift not only us, but lift everyone higher. And I think there's some kind of a deep recognition with that. Like when you feel it, you go, something in your heart goes, yes, this is how I would rather spend my time. And that's kind of the way it went for me, because I love my family, my grandparents. I had really a very helpful, good upbringing. And then once I started taking those first trips, the first trip was the United States, 5.5 weeks. The second trip I came down to Florida for 6 weeks. And thus began years and years of these travels where I would stay in people's homes and we would have gatherings like this, but it felt like it was orchestrated by the Holy Spirit, where there was a vibrational meeting that was taking place. I wasn't supposed to be speaking to big stadiums. I have a friend in Spain who dreams of me. She said, I saw you in a dream and you were speaking to a huge crowd, a big stadium. And I thought, I don't know about this lifetime. So stuff that comes out of my mouth, I don't know necessarily Wembley arenas, maybe the Spice Girls, yes, but not this kind of stuff. Because I think it's a vibrational thing. And then it has been more like these smaller meetings where we all can feel the connection, feel the vibration. There's a meeting of mind. We feel it, we nod, we even ask questions based on what we're feeling. And to me, this is how the vibrations go higher. So to me, that's what the family of God is. It's not so much, how am I going to get the 8 billion back into my mind? Because that can be like, got some strays over there, Vladimir, and what are these strays? Wild. We talk about having hair, wild hair. But no, it's really the vibrational thing. We're not trying to convince anybody of anything. We're just here for an experience. And we like anything that is conducive and nurturing for that experience. Yeah.
And it's interesting that Dr. Joe Dispenza has become so popular because that is his approach. It's educating people in quantum physics and just going into meditation to raise the vibration. And actually, his, the environment, you feel that energy, and then it's contagious, because it's just like tuning forks that one affects the other, and because it's contagious and we are affecting each other, so the frequency of the place raises, and they see light beams and stuff in the room, so I think that's the New Age approach of awakening, is through raising frequency. Of course, if we have other knowledges like the mind training, you speed up, because you have to go back to 3D reality anyway. So, but yes, I see his place in the world right now, So.
Yeah, but before Paramahansa Yogananda passed away, he talked about there would be groups of people, and I think, we're seeing lots of things from prophecy, but I do feel like the groupings are vibrational, and like attracts like. And so you draw forth the witnesses that really is where you resonate. What you resonate with, you draw forth. So it's a beautiful way of awakening, very, very soft through attraction, just going up and up and up. And that way, I do feel the Course is so deep and practical. I mean, a lot of quantum physics, I like to use a lot of teachings and movies and music and things that all can be helpful in these higher interpretations of things. So when I show a movie, I like to go into the higher interpretations. Joe comes from a lot. They do have a lot still with the brain. The brain is just a projection, and so there's a lot of things I've done. What the bleep do we know, and down the rabbit hole, and use those kind of movies as stepping stones. But with the Course, you've got Jesus Christ, so he's the master psychologist, and he just takes it all the way up. And I saw you were doing that in your book too. You were bringing in the quantum physics there towards the later part of it. Yeah, lovely. Well, I guess are we getting close to dinner? We're getting there. It's in the oven. Yeah. Any more questions or topics?
I just want to share my gratitude for being here with everyone. It is really wonderful to not just be watching from my living room couch the movies, and it really is great, and the opportunity to just connect with everybody has been really sweet.
Amen.
Yeah, we feel it. Good steer.
I wanted to share last night when we went out, there was 7 of us that went out. Igor was our tour guide, and we went out just to look at the lights. I wanted to see the lights at nighttime, and to me it was such a joyful experience because there was such a freedom and there was such a unity, but the unity wasn't just in the 7 of us that went. I felt the unity within the whole community. There were people on trolleys, and the trolleys were going by, and they were singing the Christmas carols, and the people in the trolleys were looking at us as we're walking by, and they're singing, and we're singing, and Igor bought us some I got this, I call it a bubble wand. It looks like a balloon, and it's got lights in it. And he bought the ladies some little spinner lights, and we were just going, and it was just so much fun. I felt like such a little girl, but it was so much fun. And what I loved about that was when you have that joy and you feel that, it's like everything else disappears. But to me, the unity, I've always been attracted to unity, and even when I would see people in uniform, whether it's dancers, all wearing the same costume, doing the same thing, whether it's, you've got the servicemen, holding their guns or they're walking with their flags or whatever, airplanes flying in the unison, the Blue Angels, whatever. There's always been that's always there's been just something about it, and I felt it last night. I mean, the people were joyful, like the whole community, and it was such a beautiful thing. So anyway, I just want to share that.
Thank you. Yeah, we feel it.
Yeah, it was
We're
great.
experiencing it through you right now. Yeah, that's it. Well, beautiful. Well, stay tuned. Let's stay in contact. Yeah, as we go forward. This was fun. And thanks to Igor and Katerina for inviting us and hosting us. Yeah. Divine host. Host and hostesses, you really were for us. We could all feel your love and all the care that was put into everything. It just stands out. Yeah. Helps our vibrations all go higher. Yeah, we're going higher and higher. Thank you. Yeah. And Slava would have wanted to be here, but she was not feeling well, so we'll see. I was asking her how she was feeling. She said, well, I'm just hoping by Tuesday when we fly that I feel good. So she's kind of in a period of rest and just healing. So you can all hold her in your prayers, and I think she would like some food. So when we'll get a plate of food, I'll take it back there. Yeah.
It's good that she's...
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a good sign. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. That's a good sign.
She wants food.
Just to clarify, you mentioned watching the streaming of the latest episode of The Chosen tomorrow at 11. The information I'm getting is it's at 7 Eastern.
Yes, but we have an advanced copy of it because it has an app. But if you kind of pay it forward, you can get it in advance for like a group showing. So anyway, our community is going to tune in tomorrow. I think it's 11 o'clock Eastern time, and then it just I think I was thinking whatever Igor wants. If you wanted to have the showing here, we could do it here.
Yep.
And then afterwards, I'll do a bit of commentary on it. It jump right because last time we watched last week, we were saying this is our story. This isn't like 2,000 years ago. We're going through this now. So I do sometimes a little bit of commentary, but it's always very spontaneous. So
will that be streamed on YouTube?
I don't believe so. No, this is just kind of a streaming with our community. But here we are. I'm here with you, and so if anybody is around, that could be a nice send off for people too. If they
got invited.
You could just enjoy it.
Yes.
Tuning in on a little Jesus tomorrow. Yeah.
I love that series. I started watching it just recently, actually, and I had to watch it. I watched the first season, second season. I had to watch it all over again. I was just I loved the way that Jesus was being portrayed. It was so relatable, and I thought about you so much because you talked about how Jesus is so playful, and you see that in this. But it's very, very touching. I've really enjoyed it. Yeah.
The humor. There's a lot of humor there.
Like the time when he was saying to the two the Sons of Thunder, whatever their names were, something that had happened, and he said a joke, and he looked at it. He's like, too soon, like right after it had just happened.
Right. Yeah.
Too soon?
Yeah. That's it. That actor is Rumi's doing a good.
Yeah, he's doing phenomenal.
Yeah.
It's
Well, it's always nice when something starts to catch fire and touches people's hearts, and people start going to the cinema. That was an interesting twist. You went to the cinema.
And the guy at the cinema said there was like really crowd, like sold out, like many people coming.
I heard that the first couple episodes it did better than the Hollywood movies.
Yep. Wow.
So that really got everyone's attention. Like, what is happening here? So it's touching the hearts. Yeah.
It's so relatable, though. You know,
Yeah.
it reaches like, and all of the other, you know, especially like the old Jesus films. He's so stoic, like he's so, and that was always a turnoff to me. I'm like, he's so. It's like, no, what do we take everything so seriously? Because we perceive Jesus as this serious guy. You know, that's why when you talk about him all the time being playful, I'm like, I want that playful Jesus. You know, I want to know that playful Jesus. I really do. I do. I want to know him
right there.
Well, you have a powerful mind, Betsy, so I think you have a powerful mind, so if you really want to know that Jesus, then I think it's on its way.
Did you see the third? Did you see it already?
The one for tomorrow?
Yeah.
No.
So this is the first time we're all going to see it together?
Well, what we did was we knew they were... The monastery, they saw the first two at the theater, and then the whole group watched the second one, and then tomorrow is going to be, it's just fresh off the presses, so it's a premiere.
We all get to see it together.
Yeah, we see it together for the first time,
Oh,
yeah.
that's exciting.
Yeah. They were saying that, it doesn't come out till 6 o'clock on Sunday. I said, well, just investigate. And they said, well, if you pay it forward and you pay a certain amount, then you can show it to a group of 200 or 250 people. And I said, that's a good investment. Let's do it.
Yeah.
That means on Sundays we can show it whenever we're ready. Saturday night, Sunday morning. So that's been our church service in our community. We watch a brand new episode of The Chosen on Sunday morning. And people were saying, wow, Dave, this is your kind of church service. No long sermons, short and sweet, demonstrations, examples, humor, and then, okay, thank you, good night. Yeah, we're move on. So it's really short and sweet. That's what I always liked. Good, short, sweet church service. That's my favorite kind. I don't like the long ones with the rituals, and you're looking at the clock, looking at your watch. When is it going to be over?
I'm bringing my own chair to the table. I need to grab a couple more too, I think. There's some more chairs.
Yes, sir.